Okay, so I had, so lay down areas, you're on a really tight site there.
Yeah.
And a lot, I mean, almost all the space down there right now is currently in use, correct? I mean, there's not a lot of empty space for you to,
There is
material lay down.
not a lot of empty space on this site. We haven't locked any place down yet, but we're looking at some facilities over at the State Pier. We've had some early discussions with those folks. We've talked to some of the local areas. I'm gonna go back a couple of slides. Had some brief discussions with Tilcon to use that as a queuing area for bringing in material if we need to. Is that the right facility? Yeah, it is. So we're still trying to lay down areas out and queuing areas out for this job.
I guess, what the building skin is it's a steel skin building?
It's a insulated metal panel skin. They use the same skin up at Mohegan Sun on the two casinos up there, a little different styling. It's a great product. It goes in pretty quick. Bang up the panels high, you throw some screws in it, the hull comes tongue and groove. It's my favorite product.
All right, other questions or comments? All right, thank you. So, commissioners, have anything else before we go to public comments?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that's our last formal presentation at this point, so we tried to get in under 2 hours, we just went over by 12 minutes. Dennis took the first time. But that's it, if anyone, any members of the commission have questions for us, we'll take them, but as I said, I know the couple's been waiting here patiently, and happy to step aside and let you continue.
Sure, all right, take 5 minutes and then we'll go to public comments. That. Yeah, I mean, so what is it now? It's 13, so we'll go to 9:18. We're gonna start again. 5 minutes. People have been waiting a long time. What's that? Dennis needs a backup. Yeah, I think that would be this one. Because he's at 7:30 in the morning to read his contract. It's just a lot of it's 20,000 yards of concrete. But Jim's point is a good one, but I think it's a bridge. I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure when the timing is going to be important, like concrete is, the bridge is not structure. That's really it's
So are
worse
they
than a
going to
week.
come down 385 or are they going to come down 42?
My guess is, northern from Norwich, it comes down 385, 32. That's the third
But if you want to bring the bridge
bridge, but the big coming down to 12, and that's just gonna be an answer for somebody else.
Maybe called in and he was down in the That's what we do. We called, I went in and said, let's get down. Where is it?
It sounds like there's a lot of, there's gonna be a lot of.
It's all cold.
gonna do when it rains?
Well, yeah, presumably they're gonna come, I mean, they'll come up from 639 down Greenville, right, that's all state highway. It's, you know, I guess the concern would be, what is that gonna, what is that additional revenue do? It also conflicts with the, you know, with the peak hours of the employee.
Oh, I'm not even thinking about it. Congestion. I'm thinking,
But they're on the on the road, yeah, no, I understand, but there's also, in addition to that, there's the, you know, there's the, pouring like gasoline on the traffic fire.
yeah.
Did you have a good vacation?
Oh, I had a wonderful vacation. It
And then
was,
you came home and,
well, it was a wonderful vacation, but you know, you're excited about leaving, so I was up 6 in the morning. And then I was up talking to my daughter till like 1:30 that night. And then we got up at 4 in the morning to drive out to Chicago.
oh my gosh.
And you've got the hour time change, and my grandson keeping us up till 1 o'clock in the morning talking. And then I get home at 1:15, and I'm sick as a dog from the 1:15.
Of course you are.
So Friday, my son says, you know, you're sounding better, and I'm really starting to feel better. Well, my brother from Florida comes up to visit on Saturday, and he's just started a cold. So I spent all last week on the couch.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
been in the chair.
You're lucky you don't have pneumonia.
Well, he has been nerve to say to my brother and my son, well, Sue's fit right into retirement. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, she's sitting on the couch watching TV all day. Oh, wait.
What did you expect? Yes.
No, but it's not due till May. Yeah. Oh, no, if it was due in a couple of days, I would have been there.
Yeah, I was thinking, I didn't think to mention it until last year.
No, don't worry about it. It'll be.
I remembered that last year, yeah.
No, I don't know, because then I had to report it as self-employment. Well, the other one gives me a nose a gift certificate.
Gift certificate to Carrefour.
We can straighten that out.
Otherwise, it's just a pain for me to, you know, by the time you're done with income tax and social employment tax, you might as well just do it for free. Get it over. But now that I am feeling better, as you can see, it's getting worse as the night goes on. When would you like to get together?
We're, anytime. I'll make it. I can't do it tomorrow because I got to teach tomorrow up at Three Rivers.
I'm doing my very first thing at the senior center tomorrow.
Your first thing,
My
really?
very
You've been
first
out
thing.
for a year and you haven't been
I
there?
have not been there yet.
What are you going to do?
They're playing Green Book tomorrow afternoon.
They're playing what?
Green Book, the movie?
Oh, okay. Where do you know that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go and see that.
Good. What time? I'll call you.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock tomorrow?
Yep.
Or I'll send you an email. I'll send you my schedule.
You send me, all right.
Just don't do Sunday after 5:30.
If it was
Why are we
Sunday
at
after
after
5:30,
5:30's
you'd do it.
birthday. We've been trying to get this together for a
Well,
while now.
exactly, and then on top of everything, one of the reasons I purposely didn't get up to do anything was because we had a kid's birthday party on Saturday. Then I'm making that birthday party. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she said to me, I sent her a text today. She's 23.
Shirley do?
That was nice.
She's the baby. She's the only one left. So it's like, I don't know how many years will have.
You win.
Yeah. I said, would you rather have pizza or ribs? Pizza. I said, well, that makes that easy. What kind of a cake do you want? No cake.
Oh, that's not bad.
Okay, get her a cupcake.
Do you eat up there and everything?
Well, no, she's on a very strict diet. She's been going on and off. It just lost a lot of weight.
Ben and Jerry ice cream.
This year. So she was very heavy, and she's tall, she was like 5'11". Yeah, but she carries a lot more weight than she should, so she's working on it. I think it's time, I'm sorry.
I think it's time. Okay. All right, let's get back to order here. So I'd like to give the public an opportunity to make their comments, and I thank everyone for staying around with us and being patient. I appreciate that. And we'll start off with Dennis. You have a letter that a member of the public asked you to read, so let's start with that.
Hey, Mr. Frank Ritchie, the 276 Eastern Point Road, asked this be read into the record, dated April 3rd, 2019. I am requesting that the following be presented at the April 9th, 2019 meeting with regards to EV's development plan in their south yard. EV's addition of their new assembly building has been discussed, and families living in the vicinity have accepted that their view of the river will be substantially lost, but they thought that south of the new facility, they would have at least a partial view of the river and New London. Then at a separate neighborhood meeting with EV and the architectural firm on March 26, 2019, we learned that the new floating dry dock is going to be 75 feet high, thus ending any view south of the new facility for most of the houses in this area. What we hope the zoning board will do is to strongly suggest that EV consider some type of relief for the benefit of this housing area. Things that EV should consider is as follows. One, possibly moving the floating dry dock to the west side of the new assembly building such that there is still access to the north end of this new facility. This would open up the remaining view that houses in the area thought they would have. Two, if not moving the floating dry dock to the west side of the new building on a permanent basis, then maybe they would be willing to do it during the summer months when people tend to be outside and enjoy their property in the view they thought they would have. Three, possibly think of storing the floating dry dock somewhere else while not expecting to be used for an extended period of time. Four, if either option above is rejected by ED, then what about flooding the dry dock during the summer months to lower so it is only about 40 feet high, which only blocks the river view to the channel markers, and letting it still be visible along with some of the boat activity on the river. I've included a concept of moving the floating dry dock from its currently planned position to the west side of the assembly building, showing that it can be placed there even as a temporary position without interfering with access to the north end of the assembly building and not being in the way of the river channel. Sincerely, Frank T. Ritchie.
Thank you. All right, members of the public. So generally, we would do comments in favor of the application first. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application? All right. How about comments opposed to the application?
Jeff Nichols, Nichols, 18 Chapman Street. I'm the first house in on Chapman Street. I want to strongly encourage and request and beg that you guys consider the residents in this neighborhood when thinking about whether this project happens. Essentially, this whole project will cut off the entire, will separate the river from the neighborhood, from the residential area, therefore leaving no view of that. And it will set a precedent for what you guys want Groton to be moving forward. And residents are leaving and moving because this project might happen. And I hear a lot of don't knows, a lot of to be determined, unknowns, best case scenarios when we're talking about parking and noise and all that stuff. And to be honest, that's not realistic to have like a perfect thing and perfect everything happen right. And think about whether you would want to raise your kids right next to that building. I have 3 daughters, and I got to consider leaving my house and what they're going to do with these houses that they bought and turning into parking lots. And there's really no incentive for residents who have been here. I've only been here 7, but again, I have a family of my own, and some people have been here for 30, 40, 50 years, and they're getting this there's nothing really to say that the neighbors in the neighborhood, there's nothing really in it for them. So I'm begging you guys to consider all of that in the neighborhood when you guys think about doing this.
Thank you.
Karen Nichols, Nichols, also 18 Chapman Street. Just to kind of expand on what Jeff mentioned, not only is this view obviously going to impact it for the neighbors living immediately in that neighborhood, but with that floating dry dock that now would no longer be under your jurisdiction, it's blocking this entire part of Groton from the river. And considering the shipbuilding history, yes, I understand, and national security, we are certainly supportive and patriotic. But it's not just this building that they're presenting. This, with the South Yard Assembly Building and the floating dry dock, if you see that full rendering, the floating dry dock is 750 feet long. So that goes all the way to suddenly now where that crew building is, you can't see New London at all. Maybe some trees over the top. And I do appreciate, that you guys, of course, are considering this and you're asking those questions, and the neighbors appreciate that insight on your part. A couple other things as far as the noise study, was kind of wondering why it wasn't started before the cleanup of the South Yard rather. Existing conditions I thought would be prior to any of this starting, because there has been living, 2 houses in, there's been a significant amount of noise, mostly during the day, but, bumps and everything here and there overnight as well. And so I don't think, I'm not a professional, but it sounds like maybe that 40 to 70 might be a little bit lower if it were prior to when some of this cleanup started. I'm guessing, and I apologize, you guys are better at that than I am, but, and also on the wind side of things, which Commissioner Streeter mentioned, as far as it's always windy, or at least breezy in Groton. So it's, does that 40 or 50 to 54 account, is that with wind, without wind? Is it going to be higher with the wind? So just some issues on the noise. I don't know that we're nervous about the whole thing. I did look through that traffic report, and I noticed that it started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I will tell you that at 2:33 in the afternoon, people are flying up our street already, and we are a side street that was not included in the impact study. So obviously and if you try to go anywhere in Groton at 2:30, it's going to take a while. So, and that's not just with the construction that's going on down, getting towards 95. So if maybe the revised study could bump that time earlier a little bit. And so that's kind of the main issues that we're thinking of right now. I've got a lot of other things, but that's more regarding the actual objects that were presented tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Virtue. I live on 17 Chapman Street.
Spell your last name.
Virtue, V as in Victor, IRTUE. I think that the first thing, there's lots of things that I would like to get into, but we learned a lot of things today that we might not have known before this. But I appreciate that EB at least gave the appearance of cooperation and understanding and transparency throughout this entire process, at least over the last couple months, since we had 3 meetings, one in January, one in February, and one in March. But I feel like that was not really the case. At the first meeting, which my husband Dan attended, we were told that the dry dock, which is really what's in question here for a lot of us, which is not in, which you learned tonight yourselves, is outside of your jurisdiction as well. Told that the dry dock would be about 35 feet down, closer to the water, and that we wouldn't have anything to worry about. So it was going to be out of the view of the water. The second meeting, so that was, people walked away thinking, okay, it's not going to be as bad as what we were thinking. With this enormous building, we're worried more about, looking down the river towards the mouth of the Thames, that people would still maintain that view. Second meeting on February 26th, which I attended. My husband attended the first one. Second meeting on February 26th, we were told about 2 utility buildings that they were going to be putting in front of the enormous building closer to Eastern Point Road, which would have further impeded upon Eastern Point and closer to us on Chapman Street. That was a shock to us. So they told us that they were going, and this was coming from Fuss and O'Neill representatives, that they would try to work around those utility buildings, which is what they did for us by the time we got to the third meeting, which I attended, and my husband, both of us attended on March 26th. And at that meeting, they, went through the very lengthy process of telling us how they had shifted those utility buildings to be in the front. The landscape architect told us that, she worked with us with our suggestions for getting away from the evergreens, I think they were, evergreens and evergreen shrubs that were going to be planted there originally right along the road line. Between the meeting on the February 26th and on the meeting on March 26th, they were able to work with that and work with us. So we all felt pretty good about that until it got to the point about the dry dock being not down closer to the water level, but on the final rendering, which you guys saw today, the dry dock was up at the 70 feet mark. So it was going to essentially block any water view that people had going down towards the mouth of the looking south down towards the mouth of the Thames River. So in terms of what was said earlier today, there is a significant visual impact that was going to happen. Most of us had conceded that the building at the end of Chapman Street was happening, but not the dry dock, which was a surprise at the last meeting. I think my biggest concern right now, and my husband and I kind of both went into this scenario knowing that we were pretty helpless in losing those front water views from the front of our house and our view of Fort Trumbull and across the river. But so there's nothing that we could do to stop it because it was already set in motion. But we attended the meetings because we thought that we could at least be informed about what was happening and maybe give our input into it. And as I said, whether it was just the appearance of cooperation and understanding, I have my own opinions. But as far as we know, we're still going to have views from the back of our house, which is where we spend most of our time, at least for now. That's where we have views. But our main interest at this point, and I just want this to be on the record because I know we're talking right now, and you guys are dealing with the 75 Eastern Point Road and the big building that's going to be put in there, along with the two smaller utility buildings. But our main interest at this point is finding out what EB is planning on doing with the properties that are on Eastern Point Beach on our side of the road, Eastern Point Road, that go around our house. So we have 306 Eastern Point Road, which is directly behind our house, which has been unoccupied for a number of years now and has fallen into disrepair. That's one of the first properties, according to the public record and according to the newspaper, that EB purchased. And so we would like to know what's going to happen with that, as well as we believe 284, which is right next to us, 290 and 302, the houses that all kind of wrap around our house. And as I said, this is just for the record, so it's on the record. And we were told at those three meetings that they don't know what EB is planning on doing with those properties. But to us, that makes a big difference. We can't stop what's already set in motion, we believe, with the project. And as Lauren said, completely patriotic and realize the growth that it's going to bring to this area and the importance for national security and the defense program, all of that. But again, we would like to know, and it doesn't have to be right now, but what the plan is for the surrounding properties. I know that it's zoned residential. That's what we've been told. That's what we've been assured. But we were also told different things along this whole process as to what was going to be happening, and that wasn't necessarily true. As the commissioner had stated, when you were talking about the parking and the traffic, meeting regulations and this actual need and actual utilization, it's still a problem. So that is our concern about what's going to happen with those properties. I don't think that EB would be going into a $1 billion project and offer to buy these houses from the people that live in those properties, which a majority of them, to our knowledge, have sold. I don't think that they would go into it not having a plan for what they were going to do with those houses. If they are going, I don't think they're in the real estate business, but it was suggested that they might sell those properties to EB employees, which, okay, that would be fine. But we would like to know that if they're planning on going in and knocking down those buildings, I know that it's zoned residential, but people can get around that. They could put parking spots, because we learned today that and we know from just living in the area, that there is a lack of parking in the area, and the congestion of the traffic with even 2,000 projected new employees is going to increase, and it's going to be a problem. So if they're planning on keeping those houses, if they're going to knock them down, if they are going to knock them down like Pfizer did with a number of their properties as they started to expand, and then just put grass there, we don't know. So that's really our main concern at 17 Chapman and the Virtue family as to what's going to happen with those, because we do feel like there's not much input that we can have from this point on with the actual building and the floating dry dock. But that's our concern. I just wanted to be noted so that when they do decide what they're going to do with those properties, that we made a point to say that we had concerns about it. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that, give everybody a chance?
I'd like to say something.
Good evening. My name is Edwin Vasquez, V-A-S-Q-U-E-Z. Live at 30 Chapman Street. I'm actually for and against the project. Sorry for the misdirection a little bit. I just wasn't sure which way to come up. The reason I say that is because I'm an electric boat employee and a resident of Groton, so I share a unique perspective from both sides. Like Ms. Dunn had said earlier, this is interesting times, exciting times to be electric boat, and I'm glad to be a part of it from an EB employee side. It's very important, we understand, very critical to national security, what we're doing. But as a resident, it saddens me that we're losing the view and whatnot, but we've come to understand that is part of the deal with this construction. A few things that we, well, first of all, we want to thank the open communication that we've had over the last few months with Electric Boat to open dialogue, and we stressed that we'd like to continue that. As far as continue to engage. As you've heard before from fellow residents, it's very important to us. Certainly we have issues, concerns that may or may not have answers yet. Parking, for instance, I understand there's a plan for parking, but where is it going to be at? Where is this new parking lot or per se is going to be at? Concerns about traffic. Chapman Street, I understand that wasn't part of the study, or at least it wasn't mentioned in the study. Is that going to be turned into a one-way street? Are we going to have cars parked alongside front? I understand there are signs up there for resident parking only, but will that really be a deterrent? The corner right there on Chapman Street and Eastern Point Road, it's like a blind curve. People are already flying around that curve. So with more traffic, I expect more of that, higher frequency of that. So I urge you to not only Electric Boat, but the City of Groton as well, to continue to engage with the residents as to any developments, any changes to these plans, and how it may impact us. It's very important to us. And I believe everything else has been mentioned already. Yes, sir. As my wife just explained. Yes. We are in agreement with Electric Boat on the cityscape, the buffer. So I feel it's important that you are well aware of that. So we urge you to strongly consider the proposal that will be submitted later on as far as the landscape. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jenna McLean, M-C-C-L-A-I-N at 23 Nicholas Avenue. I think, thank you everyone for what was presented tonight. I think it gave me personally a lot of clarity on what's going to be happening and that I'll be able to share with my family. My two biggest concerns lie just strictly in the beautification and, the quality of life overall, and the beautification post-project or post-construction, as well as air quality and air and noise pollution during the construction. I know that there are a lot of children who live in the neighborhood. I grew up there, and I know that, Eastern Point Road and Nicholas Ave and Chapman, those are all our playground. And I know that that's the case for the children now, so I think safety is also a big concern. So I would just urge you all to think more so on the side of what's going to be done during the construction, and how residents are going to be safe, how our, will we have a prompt schedule of when blasts are going to be happening, and so people are aware and aren't taken off guard by that. So I think that would be, and I know during construction of the Pfizer buildings and things like that, cars and if you left the windows open, your floors were covered in dust, and there was a lot of air pollution. So I guess I would just be concerned about that for quality of life. So that's where my concerns are. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Nichols, you want to speak?
Nichols, N-I-C-H-O-L-S, first name Jeff. Again, I just kind of wanted to reiterate that, piggybacking everybody else, and the incentives for residents and what you guys want Groton to look like. And again, we support national security. Just because we don't want this big 160-foot building in the back of our yard doesn't mean we're unpatriotic. The dry dock, again, is something that is going to be used 2 weeks out of the year, but it's going to be blocking everything, literally separating it. And also consider property values. So there's people who are leaving, who want to leave, and we're considering it, to be totally honest with you. And what's that going to look like for property value? Because we will have to disclose if this building goes up or after it goes up, we're going to lose a lot of it. So what's the compensation for us? Because that's not what we signed up for 7 years ago. So, and we really look at the properties down towards Garber Lobster, and those were purchased by EB properties, and there's weeds growing, there's cracked parking lots, there's all kinds of stuff that now they look like shit. And we take our neighborhood seriously, and those have been forgotten properties and just been neglected for years, and they're EB owned. So now we have to worry about that, especially if there's properties being bought that we now have no say over because EB owns them and they couldn't care less. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So we're going to keep the public hearing open until April the 30th, correct? Do we need to take any action to do that, or we just
Recess.
just recess it?
It will be April 30th at 6:30 in this room.
All right. Thank you very much. New business? None, correct? Report of commission.
Do you want some?
Report. Any commissioners, any report from staff? Do we get anything urgent?
No?
No? All right, so then,
Just adjourn us. It's continued until the 30th.
I'll fill you in after let's just adjourn. Oh, sorry. That's all right.
so
Adjourn us.
we're adjourned.
Second.
Yeah, quick.
What did you want me to do for, minutes? I mean, I just put down who spoke and what.
Well, that's good, because that's really clear stuff, so. I mean, anything you capture, just give it to Dennis. Certainly appreciate helping out. If you want to make copies of it for yourself.
The next meeting,
Okay,
April 30th,
April 30th,
6:30.
6:30. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I know it was a marathon.
We almost canceled out on the 30th. because we have an RTM meeting on the 30th. Oh. Because we're going to the budget, so we just won't see RTM on the 30th. But they're not sure if that's, the council wasn't sure what they were gonna have that night.
Nice job.
Well, we're definitely gonna need you, because,
Yeah, I agree.
because we have to have enough people.
Safety, public safety. I think Jerry's in, Seattle. Oh, nothing was done.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, his daughter's up there.
But I thought they were going.
No, I think that, because Kay and I used to do this.
I bet that's where they are.
Well,
I knew they were planning a trip, I just didn't know the time.
he's got,
He probably said something.
he's got a few hours to kill, he can go listen to the thing.
Well, he only has to do the part that started at 7.
He only has 2.5 hours.
Is that all?
Good night.
See you.
Good night. Thank you.
Anytime. I feel something.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm not taking
That last one was a turn.
It's worth figuring out. Because the residents want, so.
And I've been wrong so far tonight. But I think that I said that it's 75 feet from the trees where the will to Eastern Shore. So why is that happening there? Because it's so far out?
Yeah, because it's so far, it's almost like extending the ground straight out to the river, and so as you go out.
They sorted this. Yeah. It's, what is this? No, that's the building, right?
I'm sorry, the one before that.
Yeah, it's this one, there's the driveway. See, I mean, what they were thinking was that they were gonna have, that they're gonna have that, they're gonna have that.
This is 75 feet off, what top of that is 75?
Because this is supposed to be 75 feet from Eastern Point Road.
What is, this is 75 feet below, the ground is down here.
Right, the water level is down there.
Right, she raised your point, if this thing is 75 feet on the ground, that means the top of it is equal to the ground. Does that visually get it?
So is this,
Right, you
well,
agree, right?
but wait a minute, is that the dry dock or is that, or is that the utility?
No, the utilities over here.
Johnny.
Yeah, these are these guys.
Because I know I
We need an engineer.
Yeah.
So we know that this line is 75 feet above the water, the street line. So for that respect to be right that high, that really is sitting there.
What they need to do is they need to draw cross, well, they have cross sections in their plan, but the cross sections will be more closer to like, I don't think. I mean, there is a little bit about the perspective. I think it is a little.
But wouldn't making it further away make it recede?
Like maybe it'd be a little lower in the.
Yeah, this was.
Like, I don't think that these are accurate. I think these are standard. You're only gonna see like 4 feet of basins. I think.
Well,
But those are gonna be lowered, brought down.
the other thing is, this is a guy on a bicycle, and that's a 75-foot building.
Yeah.
He's a big dude.
Well, if that fence is 8 feet, and this building is supposed to be down to 10 feet below the building, you know, then theoretically, the roof should be halfway up.
Yeah.
I mean, you want the BL architects to run that perspective?
I'm sorry.
Maybe you should have the BL guys run that same perspective. Just draw that.
Well,
Is that hard to
it's a
do?
model, so
But that's
It's
what
kind
they're
of just
really,
they would have to give us, like.
I mean, because you just figured how far, I mean,
photos,
we just figure out if you're in the street and something is gonna be, you can do the measurement off their drawing, how many feet the water is, and then stick something out there 75.
That's all right, we'd ask like for a cross-section.
There is a cross-section. They have one, I think they have one through the floating dry dock, and they have one right through
No,
the.
no, I mean, like, line of sight, where you're like, there's the road, there's my line of sight.
Yeah,
there's-
exactly. Yeah, that's right.
like,
I know what you're talking about.
Overall cross-section.
We do them all the time on projects. If
Right.
you're standing here, what are you looking up, down?
Yeah.
With those dotted lines
Like
from your
a- yeah,
eyeballs?
like a line of sight
Yeah, yeah.
drawing, not a rendering.
Correct.
Usually
Which
people-
would show you, you know, a good example of, the height of the, you know, the only thing is sometimes you have to exaggerate the scale, like you do, you know, 1:1, but they do give you a better representation sometimes.
but it did seem like that became a bone of contention.
Yeah.
tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
Based off of what they saw.
Recently.
I'm not
Plus it
familiar
came up
with
at the end of
I'm
the.
not familiar with the operation of a dry dock. Is that, so it
So,
it
I
has
asked
two walls,
about-
does
I
it
asked about
sink
that.
into the
Yeah, I
ground?
asked about that. It's a
Can